Good morning and welcome to Public Interest Podcast, episode 15, with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who leave the world better than they found it. We're here this morning with Jill Ortman-Fouse of the Montgomery County Board of Education. Jill is in her first term in the Board of Education, and we're in Montgomery County, Maryland. So, good morning, Jill. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jordan. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'd like to start this podcast off by asking you, what are you currently doing or what have you ever done to advance the public interest and why?
I think I first became interested in how to try and, as you say, leave the world better than I found it. Many years ago when I was just getting started as an activist in college. Mm-hmm. And then once I graduated from college, I co-hosted a morning show called Carolina Today in Eastern North Carolina. And I found of all the guests that I interviewed on the show, the ones that I enjoyed the most were the ones that were giving information that was really going to help people. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed having guests who talked about mental health or physical health, mm-hmm. or different ways that we could make the community that we lived in a better place. And then I got hired as director of public affairs for an NBC affiliate in Raleigh, North Carolina, and started doing documentaries there mm-hmm. about issues like teenage pregnancy, illiteracy, poverty, and a number of different other issues that were of concern to the community there. Mm-hmm. And I decided that instead of just talking about different issues and teaching people about issues. Another one I did was on rape that was actually nominated for an award, and what happens in the aftermath of rape. But when not just educating about issues, but I wanted to do direct service. So I started thinking about the Peace Corps. But it took, at that point, the pickup time was a long time to get into Peace Corps, and I was ready to just do volunteer work right now. So I left my job at that TV station and became a full-time volunteer with Habitat for Humanity International. Wow. And I went down to their international headquarters in Georgia, where I planned to just be a volunteer in service doing home building in different places around the world. But because of my communications background, I got hired to be a public relations specialist for them. So I did communications work, but then I ended up doing a lot of building with them anyway. So, and I also did a video about their international work. So I built in Costa Rica and Guatemala and Mexico and in Georgia, which was it was a lot of fun. It was probably the best year of my life. Working with people who are like-minded was just such an incredible feeling, to be with people that saw the world the same way you did, and be able to meet so many incredible folks. So
and I guess while you were doing that, you were learning to put together a joint in a different way than perhaps some of your friends were back home.
I don't know. I don't know what they were doing. I just know what I was doing. But anyway, I actually met the man who became my husband, because he was also a full-time volunteer for Habitat. His background was in peace and conflict studies. So we decided to move to Washington, D.C. because, first of all, where do you find a job in peace and conflict studies except for in Washington, D.C.? And I wanted to go to a big city. And I love Washington, D.C. So we moved up to Adams Morgan. And then I had wanted to work with an organization called Network, which is through the Catholic Church. It was their social activist group that worked on justice policies. But it was a really hard time to find a job back then. So I went to the U.S. Catholic Bishops' Conference, and I was looking for that job, but they had a television studio. Yeah. So they needed people to do that. So I ended up producing for them, and I did programming on social justice issues. I don't know if you know anything about Jesuits or as part of the Catholic faith, but Jesuits are big on social justice. So I worked with Jesuits on healthcare policy. I know that public health is your background, but I had a program on the connection between Catholic social justice and healthcare. And so we talked about a lot of issues around end-of-life care and pain management and all different kinds of things. It was really a fascinating show. And then I ended up going to Capitol Hill and working with an organization called the Faith and Politics Institute, which is still in existence.
Yeah.
And the co-chair of our board was John Lewis, Representative John Lewis, who you probably know, who's an absolutely incredible individual, and Amo Houghton. So we had a Democrat and a Republican who co-chaired. And it was about bringing out the better angels in our elected officials, staffers, campaigners, people that worked in politics, to try and connect people with their values as opposed to just using polling to decide what they were going to do or what lobbyists told them to do. It was, what are your better angels of your nature calling you to do in your public service, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you were Christian or Jewish or a non-believer. It was an interfaith organization, still is.
So you've now find yourself, as John Lewis is, although in a different capacity, as an elected official.
Yes.
And as we all know, there are many ways to construe the responsibilities of an elected official. One of which is called kind of more of a representative, where or a delegate, where you're basically taking what the community thinks and then you're just implementing their will, versus a trustee, which sounds like a little bit more what you're talking about, which is you're elected, people invest their trust in you to make the right decision on their behalf, and then you do what you need to do according to the dictates of your conscience. Does it sound like you're a little bit more on the trustee end of the spectrum?
Yes, and it's really funny because I went on we had a retreat with Leadership Montgomery recently. I'm in the Leadership Montgomery class of this year, and we got in places of the room depending on where you felt like public officials should land. There were just a handful of public officials there. Did you go guided by your conscience or what the public told you to do, what the stakeholders told you to do?
Right.
And I was definitely in the, listen to the stakeholders, but a little bit more towards what my conscience tells me to do. Because I feel like people that I know that supported me agreed with my values. So sometimes doing the right thing is not popular, and sometimes what's popular is not doing the right thing. So I really believe that I need to listen first to my values and my conscience, because I think that's why the people who I know supported me, because they felt like the way I saw the world was in alignment with the way they saw the world. But sometimes I take stakeholder input and adjust where I fall based on, okay, you're telling me something then that what I'm seeing or feeling, and I need to listen to that, because your reality actually could be the reality. I don't hold the keys to the only reality.
So you've been in office for about 2 years, a little over 2 years. Are there any examples from your time as a member of the Board of Education where you have had to follow the dictates of your conscience, and that was contrary potentially to what was most popular? Have you ever done an unpopular thing?
Absolutely. I think basically I've done a lot of unpopular things. I think it's because we've had a big communications issue since I think it's for a long time. We have a huge school system, an enormous school system, 14th or 15th largest school system in the country out of 14 or 15,000 school systems. Okay. So we're really large. And as our new superintendent says, it's like talking to a parade. You've got so many people coming in and out. Communications is very challenging. One of our most unpopular decisions was the elimination of finals. Well, other school districts all over the country have done this because they realize you need to get in there and know what's going wrong with a student or with instruction before the end of the semester. Even colleges are doing this. And it's not been an issue in other school districts because I think communications-wise, they have been able to present that you need to have more frequent assessments, and the assessments need to be more creative. It can't just be filling in bubbles. What we need to be measuring is understanding and critical thinking skills. So giving end of semester finals where you're just filling in bubbles or giving answers to equations doesn't actually measure authentic knowledge and application of that knowledge. Okay. So based on that theory and what we read from colleges and all of the, all the evidence that we received was this was the best thing to do for our students. But we had like our math teachers leading the charge saying, you can't get rid of finals. Our children aren't going to be prepared anymore. They're not going to know how to take long tests, as though the be all and end all is knowing how to take a long test.
Right.
Well, our kids actually do take plenty of long tests because the vast majority of them take SATs and ACTs and AP exams. And in fact, I think 65% of our graduating class last year took AP exams. So you get plenty of time to do that. But we've actually been, and PARCC tests, are very long tests as well. But
could you spell the acronym out for our listeners?
Oh, yes. AP is Advanced Placement Test. I have no idea what SAT stands for. You probably know.
Standardized admissions testing.
Oh, good for you.
Standardized admissions test. Yeah.
Yeah. No one's ever asked me that before. We just, knows at the SAT. But anyway.
And PARCC?
And PARCC is the standardized test for Maryland.
Okay.
So it's just what we're using to be able to compare apples to apples across school districts.
Okay.
And there's only, I don't even know, maybe like 10 districts in the country that are still, 10 states in the country that are still using PARCC. But different states have a different, whatever model that they've chosen. So anyway, I think that was a big communications breakdown. I knew people were against it. I was doing my best to communicate to people, but I think we didn't do a good job of informing our families and our teachers of why we needed to do this to make sure that our children could be as successful as possible going into the future.
Was the Board of Education rather united in eliminating the finals, or was there dissension within the ranks as well?
There were a few of us. I mean, I was one of them that really wanted to see all of the evidence before I made that decision, because we were getting a tremendous amount of pushback on it. I felt like we had not done a good job of getting out and talking to our stakeholders enough about it and getting their input so they would understand why we were doing this, or if they felt there was a different model and why they believed in a different model. But at the end of the day, we had to do the right thing for our kids.
Sure.
I mean, you can't wait till it's too late to find out what your kids don't know, or if our curriculum is moving too quickly. If all of your kids are doing bad on an exam, you want to know before the end of the semester that everybody's missed this.
So you can do something to remedy.
So you can do something about it before the end of the semester.
So I'm just thinking right now. So you said we were talking about testing. You said I wanted to follow up on testing, but I'll come back to that in a minute. You said that you want to do what is right. Well,
yes.
Actually, before we even go to that.
But on the other hand of that, I also have done things that I don't think are right, but I had to do something.
Right.
So there's that decision too with our our later start times.
Yeah.
I don't think we ended up with the best option there, but I have to support whatever option we come up with, because that's how boards work.
So you're kind of the great communicator. Your whole professional career has been in public relations communications. And yet you say one of the greatest challenges facing the board today is communicating out what the evidence is, what the strategy, what the rationales are for your decision
Absolutely.
to the stakeholders.
Yeah.
How has your communications background allowed you to address these issues in a manner that the board previously wasn't able to do?
I'm trying to do as much communication with stakeholders personally as I can, and also I'm trying to communicate with our leadership and with our staff of our board office. When I see holes in communication, this is what we need to do, trying to give them some tips and some instruction. I just did a big memo on communications and what we could be doing differently. So I think we are planning to do a communications audit, and I'm very excited about that our new superintendent and the chief of staff for our new superintendent recommended. They heard I've been saying it since I got on the board, but we did, new superintendent, who is wonderful, did what is it called? A word capture, where you measure how often a word comes up in
like a word cloud.
Like a word cloud.
Okay.
So he had gotten a ton of email, both internally and externally, from stakeholders, from people inside the school system, outside the school system, saying this is what you need to be thinking about, this is what you need to be doing. And so he did word clouds on both internal and external, and communications was in the top 3 for both of those. And it's a real need for us.
So is that kind of like going out into town halls like the previous superintendent did, or is it more making sure you have communications with media outlets? Is it producing your own television or radio shows? What exactly is it that
it can be all of those things. It can be town halls, which are more artificial constructs. It can be just, he said he's very open when there's any kind of public event. You want to invite him to talk at, rather than having an artificial construct. If you're already doing something, invite him to come, and he can talk to your group and the people in your group about the issues that really matter to you and where we fall into that. It's about relationship building as much or more than anything else. So having good relationships with the media, so they know if they have a question, don't go outside first, come to us, and we're going to share with you what's really going on, and be transparent about what's really going on, and be trustworthy about that.
So I know you've only been in office for 2 years. You don't have a longitudinal perspective of what's been going on the last 20 years, but we have experienced in Montgomery County, Maryland, a diminishment in the Fourth Estate, which is to say that the Gazette shut down.
Absolutely.
Well, first the politics and business section of the Gazette shut down, then the entire Gazette shut down. The Sentinel has some circulation, but it's not as wide as other periodicals. The Washington Post has a metro section that possibly covers things now and again, but generally isn't on the ground. You have Bethesda Magazine and a few local blogs. How would you say the dearth of local journalism has been affecting your work in our schools?
I think it's terrible. I mean, it's awful. As someone who, media was my, as you say, is my background. It's been a huge loss. Not having the Gazette is a huge loss. All of the things that you're talking about, because it makes it harder for us to get messages out there, because now whatever people say on the internet is what they take as true. In fact, someone put a comment on my Facebook page yesterday. I had posted a video, and then they posted another video, and so now you need to watch this. And it's like some fake news outlet. And if you go to Snopes, they have a whole list of fake news outlets, people that call themselves news outlets that are not truly news outlets. But people are now posting these things everywhere. It's like, oh, well, I saw it on, Hash News, and it's like Hash News literally makes up stuff, whatever. So
they're making.
So it's just like whatever.
Anyone can be the source of truth.
Anyone could be the source, and they think it's hilarious, these fake news groups, that they can make up news stories that go viral, and people actually believe them, and it's a very confusing world, and that's why we talk about testing and authentic assessment of children's knowledge. More than anything else, what kids need is critical thinking skills. They need to learn how to dive deep into all this incredible content they're receiving, and dissect it and understand it and make sense of it and what's valuable and what's not valuable.
It's not just regurgitating an answer and choosing option B.
Exactly.
It's, you're in a situation, how do I write an essay? How do I, respond? Okay, so thinking on your feet, thinking through problems, not just seeing a problem and finding...
And the application of that. Yeah, right, absolutely. And emotional intelligence, that's actually huge. Those soft skills is what we're hearing from business and industry more than anything else, is that our students need to know soft skills going into the workplace. It's customer service skills. It's relationship building. It's how to work as part of a diverse team. That is the biggest benefit that I think people don't actually realize of going to school in Montgomery County, is knowing how to work with the diversity of humanity. That skill is incredible to bring into the workplace.
Interesting that you mentioned that. So how would you define the purpose of Montgomery County Public Schools education?
Life ready and future prepared. That's what we want our kids.
So you're making future citizens, you're making future members of the workforce, but you're making future members of society.
Right.
It's not just about making them ready to get a job. It's not just about getting them into college. It's about making them ready to live in our democracy.
Exactly. I want them to be able to contribute in a positive way and feel empowered to do that. That they can work across whatever differences that they have with other people on big challenges. Because the only way that we're going to make a difference with the biggest challenge facing us is if we're able to work across lines of differences.
So on that note, we're approaching the end of this episode. So what I'd like to do is ask you about your North Star. Earlier you mentioned that you have a sense of right and wrong.
Yes.
And that you make decisions based on your values, based on your conscience. Where does that come from? How do you know what is right or wrong? What informs your sense of morality?
I think it's just a sense of fairness. That you have your Myers-Briggs thinking, feeling. I sort of like a cross between the both. Does this feel fair? And then when I look at the analysis or the research, does that analysis tell me it's fair?
So gut check.
And
then intellectual validation.
Yeah, validation. Yeah, absolutely. Like looking at the research. And I love research. I love data analysis.
So when you're looking to solve a problem or an issue, make a decision on an issue as a member of the Board of Education, what is a question that you ask yourself, is this fair? Do you ask that on almost every decision?
So many times I ask, is this fair? And then I ask the question, I'd like to see the data.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it's very hard to get it's been very hard to get the data to be able to make those kinds of decisions. I think it's more people want, for people and staff to say, this is what direction we're going to give you. But it's like, no, I want to see why you're giving me that direction. I think with our new superintendent, though, he's really done a great job of sort of taking the covers off of the data so that we can make better informed decisions. And I'm thrilled about that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So this has been episode 15 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the world. You heard it straight from Jill Ortman-Fouse, who says, look, you got to combine your heart and your mind. You got to do a gut check. Is this fair? And based on that, understand that there is some potential opportunity for fallibility when you do ask, is this fair? Because, there are many different perspectives. So then you got to come around and make data-driven decisions to actually see if the data supports your emotional gut reaction. So again, public service, a lifetime of public service from the TV shows and journalism to building homes, and advancing many missions of nonprofits. Jill Ortman-Fouse, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jordan.
Take care. Bye.